What's up guys, Humphrey here. If you're new to the channel, my name is Humphrey and I make videos here on YouTube on personal finance and investing. Today, I wanted to walk you guys through step by step exactly where I think your money should be going when you get paid. I think that a lot of people get confused whenever they get paid on how to allocate their money, and if you just follow along with this video, you're going to be in a much better financial situation in the future. I know that for me, before I started allocating my money properly, I was having a hard time doing the things I wanted to do, like travel, pay off my credit card debt, buy Christmas gifts for others, and even eat out at my favorite restaurants whenever I wanted to. I remember a specific Christmas back in 2012 when I didn't have any money to buy my friends Christmas gifts. Now, I don't know if you've been there, but if you've ever received a gift and been unable to reciprocate, it feels kind of crappy. The funny thing is though, even though I was making around $50,000 a year in my salary at the time, I just wasn't managing my money properly. I personally hate it when money is a source of stress. So now I know that if I can be safe and money isn't a continual source of stress, that I'm going to be operating at a much higher level than I used to be. Without the stress of money, I can really focus on the things that I can control and actually focus on making even more income. So that's my personal belief. With proper money management, we're gonna be less stressed about money. And if you believe in that same sort of belief, then keep watching this video and make sure to smash the like button. So in today's video, I'm gonna share with you each step, and there's probably at least one of these steps you haven't heard of that hasn't been covered anywhere else. So make sure to watch the video all the way to the end to hear that step. So with that being said, let's get into step one. And step one is actually contributing to a retirement account. Now, before we actually get into step one, we need to address the fact that most people don't even get to step one because after they receive their paycheck, it goes into their checking account. After it gets in their checking account, then they just start to spend money reactively and not proactively. And as a result, sometimes what we'll find is that we're actually living paycheck to paycheck when it really doesn't need to be that way. This is exactly what I used to do, and there's no shame in being here, but we definitely need to recognize that we are at this point right now and really get onto step one. So step one is before our money even hits our checking account from our paycheck, we wanna make sure that we've portioned off a percentage of our paycheck straight into a retirement account. In the United States, you can get a 401k sponsored plan by your employer, and many other countries have a similar type of retirement plan as well. Every pay period, you can set aside a small percentage of your paycheck to automatically be deposited into that 401k. Now, a good goal to set aside every paycheck is about 10% of your paycheck going straight into a retirement account. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics in the United States, the average salary is actually $48,000 a year. Now, if you do make that average salary and you set aside 10% every paycheck, that means every year you're going to be saving between $4,000 and $5,000 a year for retirement. That might not sound like a lot, but considering the fact that if you started doing this at age 25 and you put aside $5,000 for retirement all the way until the age of 65, with a 7% compounded annual return in the S&P 500, you'll actually have an ending balance of over $1 million by the time you're 65 years old. So boom, just right there, if you set aside 10% of every paycheck and you earn the average salary in the United States from the ages of 25 to 65, you're virtually guaranteeing that you're gonna be a millionaire by the time you retire. The other advantage here is that by setting aside a portion of your paycheck before it even hits your checking account, you're not tempted to spend it, which is actually more important here. You'll also get tax advantages depending on the plan that you're on and your employer. Okay, so that's step one, but what is step two? So let's say you actually do step one and you portion off a percentage of your paycheck into your retirement account. Well, step two is the money hits your checking account. Now, this is where the buck stops for most people. Actually, hold on one second. Here's some buck. This is where the buck stops for most people, and this is just prop money, so it doesn't really matter. But the buck doesn't stop for you here. Because you're watching this video, we will know exactly where your money should go after it hits your checking account. Now, there are a lot of options for where your money can go after it hits your checking account, but in my opinion, the highest priority is something that I like to call the overhead fund. And this is step three, and I guarantee that you have not heard of the overhead fund. Essentially what it is it's a fund for all your necessary expenses in life. That can mean things like rent, utilities, groceries, insurance, etc. Now, this is not an emergency fund, which I will talk about shortly. This is actually just a fund that you're going to accumulate to cover your necessities in life. Ideally, you know your monthly recurring expenses down to the number, and you're saving money into your overhead fund from your paycheck to get to a certain savings level that you're comfortable with. Now, I personally like to save between 3 to 6 months of my necessities in a separate account from my emergency fund. And the reason is that if I encounter some sort of situation like I lose my job, I can dip into my overhead fund and not my emergency fund. Ideally, my emergency fund is only for life-threatening emergencies or things that are going to displace me for a period of time. The point of this fund is that since we need food on the table and electricity running all the time, it's nice to have a separate fund just for this that's separate from your spending money. For me, I really like compartmentalizing all my accounts, and this just really gives me peace of mind knowing that I have, 3 to 6 months of my living expenses covered. After those needs are met, at the same time, you can also be saving for step 4, an emergency fund. Now, ideally, an emergency fund is an account that you do not touch unless for emergencies. Now, because I personally have an overhead fund, I save a little bit less money in my emergency fund. However, my emergency fund still has between $10,000 and $15,000 in it, and that's for catastrophic emergencies. A lot of traditional personal financial people will advise you to keep between 3 and 6 months of living expenses in your emergency fund, but that's actually what my overhead fund is for, and my emergency fund is strictly for crazy emergencies. Either way, the point of having an overhead fund plus an emergency fund is to ensure that you have the ultimate peace of mind while operating in your day-to-day life. As far as where to keep your own emergency fund, I like to just keep my money liquid in a high yield savings account, either from Ally Bank, which is an online bank, or Marcus by Goldman Sachs. That way you're still accumulating interest on your money, which will help you against inflation. I would not recommend keeping your emergency fund in anything that involves risk, such as individual stocks or a brokerage account, because if you lose that money, that's not going to be very good. I think having an emergency fund is going to give you a lot of peace of mind. Now, if you ever do dip into your emergency fund, one of your first priorities is, after you dip into it, is to refill that bad boy back to its normal level. So this is just my personal method. I like to have an overhead fund and an emergency fund, but if you want to combine both into one fund, that's totally up to you as well. Okay, now that we have our necessities and basics covered, step 5 should be to pay off any debt that we have. More specifically, if you have any high interest rate debt, this is the step in which you want to take care of that. High interest rate debt would be anything over 10% of an interest rate. Now, if you have some debt that's around 5 to 6%, you can make an argument that that's not super high, although I would say it's probably hard to get a return of 5 or 6% in the market or in investments reliably, so I would even start to pay off 5 or 6% and higher interest rate debt. So personally, I love having as little debt as possible, and when it comes to paying off debt, you have a few methods to pay it off. The first is called the snowball method, where you pay off the smallest balances first. And the other method is the avalanche method, where you start to tackle debt with its highest interest rate first. Depending on how much debt you have and what your income is, you could be at step 5 for quite a while. But for me, it's incredibly important to pay off your debt before you start investing, because if you don't pay off your debt while you're investing, it could cause some stress and problems. So some people will argue that if you have really low interest rate debt, such as student loan debt, which is maybe at 3%, that you could actually start investing in investments. Now that's totally up to you. That's going to be your judgment call, and that's going to depend on how much risk you're willing to take. In any case, step 5 is about paying off your debt. I want to at least address where that should go in the priority of steps. Step 6 is all about the investment portions of your paycheck. Now this is where it gets pretty fun. The money that goes into this account can actually flow into a lot of other assets. Within this account, you're hopefully breaking up your money into a well-diversified portfolio of many different assets that you can hold. These types of investments can include, for example, portioning off some cash for a real estate fund, a fund for your vacation or your dream car, investing in a Roth IRA, a traditional IRA, perhaps you want to invest in some stocks. Cryptocurrencies could be another investment, or precious metals and collectibles. With your investment account, you're looking for investments that are appreciating and also paying you in the short term. Hopefully your investments grow, they start to compound, and you can start to reinvest those investments in your investment account and have your money work for you. I have plenty of videos on my channel on investing, such as the simplified portfolio with only 3 funds. If you'd like to check that out, I'll put that in the link in description below. According to Naval Ravikant, which is the CEO of AngelList, having wealth is basically having assets that are generating you cash while you sleep. And to do that, we can't do that unless we have proper money management. I hope that with this video, you now know the possibilities of where your money can go every paycheck. My goal is to get you guys to financial literacy and build a financial foundation as fast as possible. So I hope that you enjoyed this video. And if you got any value out of this video, make sure to drop it a like and subscribe to my my channel. Subscribing is free and it costs absolutely nothing, so if you'd like to see more videos from me, just hit that subscribe button. Feel free to follow me on Instagram. My handle there is Humphrey Talks. If you're ever just bored, scroll on the gram, that's where you can find me. If you'd like 2 free stocks valued up to $1,600, when you deposit $100 with Webull, please use the link in my description below for that. Lastly, thank you to all my Patreon supporters. I really appreciate you guys being here, and I'll see you guys in the next video, which will hopefully be just in a couple days here. Okay, have a great day.